All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the bi-weekly Viceroy Cyber seminar. We are about to conclude the semester. We've got one more to go. On the 21st is when we will finish. Today, we have a great pleasure of having a group of Cyber students having presentations. So we'll divide this up into two. So the first set of things to talk about will be presented around Cyber Capstone project, and that will be done by Sean Hudson and Kumaya Tahir. Both of them are cybersecurity majors. They are senior. And the cybersecurity degree program has a single semester capstone senior design course. That's just one semester. And for this batch of students, that happened in fall 2025. And so they completed that. This spring is their very last semester, and they will be graduating, both of them, in May. Going forward, the capstone course in cybersecurity will be a spring semester course. So this was a little off season, and we had a reason for doing that. That will be the first. I'll introduce the other two speakers later on, but that will be on a different subject on a recent conference experience a couple of cyber students had. So it's a great pleasure to have all of these students from past experience. I'm very excited when seminars are given by cyber students and they get to be popular. And so I am going to ask them to do their presentations. We will save the Q&A to the very last. And so this group of students would have 10 minutes each, 15 minutes, 20 minutes altogether, and the second group the same way. So if you've got questions, save them or have them on the chat, and we will address them at the very end. With that introduction, and Sean is also the president of the Cybersecurity Student Club, so you would get to hear about these sort of things as you continue your semesters, but that will be the person to contact if you're interested in the club, if you're not already a member. All right, with that introduction, Sean, why don't you go get started, and thank you for taking time.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Do I sound good?
Sure. This is great.
Perfect. Now. Pumai, can you go to the next slide? All right, so I'll be doing an overview of the capstone for cybersecurity specifically. It's Computer Science 432. It is a one-semester senior level course that is focusing on a team-based real-world problem. So in my case, we had 3 total members working on a very real-world problem. Go to the next slide. So there were 3 total projects offered, one from U of I, which was about building cybersecurity tutorials, one from a CrowdStrike developer, which was building a command line pen testing toolkit. And then there was a WSU-based one provided by Dr. Asaf's SCADS lab, which this is the one that Pumaya and I worked in, and it was using machine learning to detect malware with in-depth explainable reasons as to why it thinks that is malware. And Pumaya will talk about that more later. So the general capstone was made up of weekly meetings and check-ins. We had separate coaching and client meetings. Our coach was Ananth Giapali, who is also the professor. And then we had 4 sprints across all 16 weeks of the semester. So each of those sprints, like I said, you had 4 sprints, one every month, and you always needed deliverables with those. Well, so you'd include screenshots of your GitHub issues, your to-do board, to get a general sense of where each person in the team is working and what they're working on. And then also your code branches, and then pull requests to make sure you're actually all contributing to one main project. Then they also had the sprint report and the client meeting reports as well. And this is a sample of our to-do board. Can you go back one? Where this was taken after the fact, but each issue we made by hand, and then that turned out to be one deliverable or little small piece of this big project that we each made. And then on the left here, you can see one of our sprint reports. This was our first sprint report, and it basically had a list of what a user would notice that was different about the website, what we as developers knew we fixed, what we still need to fix and work on, and then good tracking of each issue that you made and the attached code push. And on the right, we have one of our client meetings. So every time we would meet with Tashi, our client from SCAD's lab, basically we just have one person take meeting minutes and scribe down everything. And then the final deliverables for the capstone were the poster, the final report, final client meeting, and then participating in the EECS poster showcase, where everyone was stood in the EME hallways and presenting their posters to anyone that would walk by for about 2 or so hours. Lunch is provided. And then during that, there's judges going around and grading all of these projects. And Humaya can talk about the judging and stuff later. But for that poster, it's just a single slide poster, and you try to talk about every aspect of the project, but not so in depth that nobody will understand it. We focused on basically anyone who walked through that hallway, whether it was a freshman or a senior professor, could understand our poster. And then here's a sample, 2 pages from our 29-page final report. On the left, we have the table of contents with every section that we wrote out. And then on the right, we have our first page, which is just an introduction to what we did, which was basically the abstract. And then we got into the project stakeholders a little bit after that.
Okay, perfect. And then now I can talk a little bit about like what actually our project was. So as Sean said earlier, our project was a machine learning Python malware analysis project. So basically you have millions of new malware that emerges, right? And you can't sort through that manually. You're going to need automation for that. So our goal was to build a malware detection platform that's accurate, explainable, and trustable. To do this, we use the Ember 2024 dataset. The Ember 2024 dataset is made by a group of people called Total Virus that basically collects malware from a bunch of different things. They have 6 different file types: Windows 32, 64.NET, APK, PDFs, and ELF files. They had over 3.2 malicious and benign files to be able to test on. The data was made from September 2023 to December 2024. And over here on the right side, you can see some important features that were actually important through the files, like entry point, PE headers, and the most important ones that we found were the byte analysis and then the important export. Here's kind of the pipeline of what we did for a project. First, you'll upload the PE file, and then you get feature extraction. So the important features like the byte links and some tables of the features to see what's important. And the model we end up using was the light GBM classification model. We tried a couple other models like the SVM and linear regression models, but those models were not as efficient as the light GBM, so that's what we ended up with. And then we'd pass those feature evaluations into the SHAP and Lime explainability, which would explain more about what each feature was that I can talk more into. And then finally, you generate an LLM report of everything. So the 2 explainable AI models that we used were SHAP, SHAP and Lime. So basically what SHAP would take each feature, and then it explain why the feature was important. So if, for example, a file was classified as 92% malicious, it break down each feature one by one about why, what percent that feature was, and like why it's important, into why it was classified as what it was. And then Lime would basically create multiple copies of whatever file we'd pass in, and then it would change each feature slightly, maybe increase or decrease its value to be able to tell you what happens when each feature is changed, and then why that would help like classify into why it was classified as malicious or benign. And then finally, you generate an LLM report. We used ChatGPT for ours, but we were working on being able to use other models for that. But basically, what that would give you was a classification verdict if it was malicious or benign. It would tell you what key features related to why it was classified or what it was, and then also go into the risk content of the file. And finally, here, as you can see, this was the poster that we end up presenting. I'm not going to go too much over because I kind of talked about it, but over here at the bottom, you can see how our top two models were like GBM and random forest, but we ended up going with like GM just because of its efficiency. Uh, yeah, though it was a really fun project. The judging was pretty cool too. We're able to go into the top four of the presentations, which was pretty cool considering we only had a semester to do our project, when other people had a full year. So it was a really fun project.
Thank you very much, Pumaya and Sean. That was excellent. I appreciated that you also took the time, Sean, in the beginning to talk about the cybersecurity capstone project or course in general and what students can expect to experience through the semester and the poster session at the very end. I was there as a judge. I got a chance to talk to this group of students as well as everybody else who presented. So all of the EECS posters are in the same day, and computer science, software engineering, and cybersecurity were in one group, and EE was in another group. And so the reason Pumaya was emphasizing was the other majors have got a senior design that's a sequence of semesters, whereas the cybersecurity course has got a single one. We've got a reason for that. That was actually a response to industry feedback we got. And so it was not just an exception for this, it is the entirety of the program that doesn't have a room for another 3 credit hours and so on. So, and it's a good thing. In many ways, it's a good thing. I'm going to move on to the next team of students to present. And if you've got questions, put them in the chat and we'll ask everybody at the very end. So thanks again, Pumaya and Sean, for an excellent job. The next team of students are going to tell us about their experience attending a conference, which I should say they did on their own. This was several of them, and I asked Adam and Emily to represent the group of students who went there on their own to a major conference on the other side of Washington in Seattle a couple of months ago in February, I think it was. And so they wanted to share this, or I asked them to share, and so they kindly agreed to do that. Adam and Emily, both of them are seniors. I should say Emily is a junior, Adam is a senior in computer science, not cybersecurity, but they are outstanding cyber students. So they've had a lot of things back in their, history. They were both Maven, Envoy at different times, and Adam was also ACE, whatever that means for some of you. He has spoken on a cyber seminar earlier. But today they will be focusing on their experience attending the B-Sides conference and telling us about it. So I'm not going to waste too much time. So I don't know, Adam, if you are going to be the one to get started, why don't you go ahead and get started? And thanks for taking the time to present with you and Emily.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Professor Asfal. Today we're going to be talking about, like Professor Asfal said, the conference we went to. We're sort of presenting on this a little bit to highlight how much extracurriculars can enhance students' learning. This is just an example of one. So we're going to go over that. And like Professor Asfal said, there were quite a few of us that went there, all the officers in the WCU CSG Cybersecurity Group Club. But today, just Emily and I will be presenting. So you already know who we are. And let's talk about the conference. So the conference we went to is called B-Sides. It's very similar if people have heard of DEF CON. It's similar in scope to that, except generally B-Sides meets up in specific cities across America. So we obviously went to B-Sides Seattle when it was over in Redmond just a little bit ago. And what these conferences typically consist of is they'll consist of things like technical presentations from industry leaders going over maybe stuff they're researching, maybe side projects, maybe stuff they're doing at work if it gets approved for public release. There's also a CTF competition there. We didn't compete in that this year, but a lot of people do show up and have fun competing in that. It's a little bit of a for fun thing, so people can kind of test out their technical abilities. And there's also a lot of cool stuff concerning career networking and connections, as well as industry relationships that people can build. In addition to that, one of the things that I really enjoyed looking at were the workshops, which we'll go over in a little bit. But that's kind of an overview. It's really is just a conference where you get to go meet people, learn things, and have a good time. Talking a little bit on the presentations, when you go to a conference, these presentations are typically by volunteer speakers. And they cover a wide variety of topics. Some examples I listed include ethics and privacy, offensive security, defensive techniques, as well as agentic AI when used in offensive and defensive automation. Um, a really cool presentation that all the officers went to enjoyed was a talk on Graphene OS, just on digital privacy and how people can better protect themselves in a world full of cyber threats. And these are really cool. Again, these can kind of come from people who are just working jobs who volunteer to help out with the conference. It can come from people who are doing research and get that approved for a presentation. And really, because there's so many presentations going on between multiple time slots, you get to pick and choose what interests you when you go to something like this. And whatever's interesting, you show up and you just absorb. Another thing I really liked at a conference like this is you'll have these workshops. So at B-Side Seattle this year, they had lockpicking, OSINT, soldering, interviews, Meshtastic, and agentic pen testing. So what these workshops are is it's a hands-on approach to learning instead of a lecture. So when you go there, they'll have stations and station leads that help guide you through essentially learning a new skill. The lockpicking one is really cool. They had these clear locks that you could use to learn how the actual mechanisms work when you're trying to pick a lock. I think they also had a lesson there that was run for a couple hours that was about key copying. And it was a really cool thing to see because it integrated the physical security aspect along with cyber. Um, I think it's sort of an underappreciated area of security that is always great to see some love. These are really cool because they help you build the practical skills that you'll actually need. And I'd say it's one of the highlights. If anyone ever gets the chance to go to a conference like this, make sure you utilize the workshops. And with that, I'll hand it over to Emily for the rest of the presentation on our experience.
Thank you, Adam. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Hello. Okay, awesome. I was worried for a second. For me, I got a lot of value about the like the people and the networking there. There were so many industry booths. There were people from T-Mobile, Nordstrom, a lot of little companies that people maybe haven't really heard about, some startups, and you could just there were some demos as well, so you could go to different booths. It was kind of a career fair setup, so it made it really easy to talk to who you want, go to whatever workshop you want. Something cool that happened from my experience is that I talked to the director of security at Nordstrom. They had a booth there, made a really good connection with him, connected on LinkedIn, and so that was super cool. And then all of us as officers, we went to this new thing that we hadn't heard about, this booth called CERT. So that stands for Cybersecurity Incident Response Team. And so they're all about having a volunteer network of cybersecurity response people, similar to the way that they're volunteer firefighters and stuff like that. And then they talked about how they're trying to expand their program, get people interested in volunteering, showed us how to apply. And then it turns out one of those guys there, Garen Shannon, he's local to Pullman. He's worked in the Pullman School District as the like director of IT for 20 plus years. So he came over I think it was the next week after B-Sides, and he gave a CSG meeting about what it means to work in defensive security. How can we apply? Why should we apply? It's super good for experience, especially now that there's such a competitive job market for all of us. So I think a lot of us are interested in that, and I know a lot of people here were at that meeting as well. Next slide. Yeah. Yeah, for me personally, I think it was really good to meet so many new people. I feel like we don't really get that outside of Pullman because career fairs and things like maybe SCL events, those are all going to be extremely local, and it's pretty much just going to be other WSU students. But here we get students from UW, people who work at Microsoft, all sorts of different people, people from industry, people from the government, kind of learn some new things at the workshops and the talks. And if you participate in the CTF, then that's another CTF to get under your belt. Yeah, so it helps you enhance your technical and like networking ability and experience.
Yeah, could I add on to that really quick, just a little bit, Emily?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
I think it's what Emily was highlighting about extracurriculars is very important, because we're just talking about this conference, but it really goes for everything we as students are doing at the university, like participating in meat and potatoes of what really enhances your learning. And conferences, when you get the opportunity, is a good way to take advantage of that. But other than that, I think we're just taking questions.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Emily and Adam. That was great. I learned quite a bit of things that I didn't know. For example, I didn't know what B-sides called B-sides that I learned, and then the kind of diversity of things that happened at that conference. I should say this one more time. I did say this when I introduced them. The Cybersecurity Student Club, the Cybersecurity Group, CSG, they did this, the officers, all of them, when there was one picture that you saw. They did this on their own. I didn't have to do anything, or they didn't even ask for, any help. They figured this out on their own, arranged it for travel and things like that. So I really appreciate that very much. And that's a great leadership that the club has. The club has a lot of good things, you know that. And so they invited somebody who attended that conference. And so the relationship they formed with them was kind of imported back to campus. And so that's awesome. And so it does do that, the club normal things, but they are also very active in competitions. So you'd probably be following things on WSU Insider and so on, all the great places where they compete and win. Speaking of that, so Adam and Sean and 3 other CSG members, they have qualified for a finals in a Viceroy competition that's happening this one. And so they will be traveling to Viceroy Symposium next week. Well, I'll be going with them. And so they are going to represent WSU in the finals, and they qualified for it, holding the first place. So awesome job, great. I'm very proud of you guys, and now you will do very well in the final competition next week at the symposium, which will happen in Virginia. There is also other group of students who would go to the symposium to present posters, and Emily is one of them. And there are 2 posters from WSU that got selected. Super proud of that too. And so there will be some students who have done both. They have a poster to present, and they also will be competing on that final competition. So the Cybersecurity Student Club is really, really active. And those of you who are members, wonderful, keep on doing that. Those of you who are not, check that out. Or if you have friends to tell about the club, you can tell them. That is a great place to learn, have extracurricular activities. If you are a Viceroy student, of course, you would meet one of the requirements. But more importantly, you would get something that would you carry on for your career in the future. And it's a great way to enjoy also while you study here at WSU. All right. So thank you very much, Emily and Adam. That was awesome. You guys will send us your slides, and we'll post this on the Cyber website. Now it's time for you guys to ask questions. You can ask on any of the teams, on any topic, on what they talked about, or something related to the club, or otherwise. I should also acknowledge Tashi, who was the mentor for this Capstone project that Sean and Pumaya presented. He was a mentor. He is a mentor for several other Capstone projects, a number of them. And so I don't know how Tashi managed to get the time to do that, and he does an excellent job mentoring students. So very grateful for his mentoring role. And he would be traveling to the symposium as one of the posters mentor there again. So thank you, Tashi. Questions? You can unmute yourself and ask if you have any questions. Anybody?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
For Adam, how do
Sure.
you go about like finding those resources? Like, how did you know about B-side, and how did you know it existed? You know?
Mhm.
Well, it's actually interesting. Sean might be a little bit better to answer that question as the club
Oh,
president, because he was the one who told me about it actually.
Okay. Sean?
Yeah, we actually had our counterparts over in WSU Everett. That cyber club had gone the previous year, and they told us we might be able to get discounted tickets if we reach out to this specific email. And B-Sides was great. One of their organizers gave us access to $45 tickets instead of the 200-ish there usually are. And they were awesome about that. They had no problem doing that. And I know they sometimes give out free tickets as well. So yeah, it was definitely the WSU Everett club that did that.
That's
Wow.
great to hear, Sean. And so many of you know this, but the cybersecurity degree program at WSU is offered in 3 campuses: Everett, Pullman, and Tri-Cities. And we do have active students in all 3 campuses. So there we go. So we have benefited from the presence of cybersecurity in the Everett campus directly this way. So, Michelle, you have got a question or?
Oh, yes, please.
Yeah, sure, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
was wondering for like Adam or Sean with the big cyber win you guys had, which is awesome. What are some good ways to like better prepare myself for cyber competitions? It seems like as of now, I kind of just wait till the date when it starts. And I'm thinking like there must be a better way. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um,
I say you can go ahead and start, Sean, and I'll
all
add
right,
on to it after the
perfect.
end.
Definitely the club meetings, the CSG club meetings for sure. We always talk about topics that we think will be necessary. Of course, like Wi-Fi hacking and things like that. We still teach on. You'll never really see that in a competition. There's a lot of great YouTube videos. It's really just knowing what tools you can use in the moment. Like Sliver was a big part of the last Viceroy competition. Since I had worked with Sliver for 3 months over the summer, I knew exactly what we needed to do, and that always helps. So it's just a familiarity with any tool you might need or any concept that might come up.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd kind of I'd agree with that. Something that I find is just practice makes perfect. So finding good platforms to practice CTFs on is definitely a must in my opinion. My favorite one is Hack the Box. I know some people are partial to Try Hack Me as well. But there's also other sites like Picto CTF, which just have free hosted CTF problems to work on. The ones on Picto are a little bit more challenge problem oriented, like you're given a small problem and you solve that for a flag. For some of the bigger competitions, that's where I would really recommend a platform like Hack the Box. They even have a penetration testing learning path, and you get a student account for like $8 a month. And in that pen testing learning path helps a lot because then you actually get to practice like lateral movement in systems, right? I haven't completed it, but I think it also does touch on C2 frameworks, which is what Sliver is. Sliver is just the open source equivalent. And like Sean said, that was the main tool that we used for the Viceroy Gilded Guardian competition. The familiarity we had with that was, I'd say, instrumental. Yeah, Sean worked with it a lot last summer. I worked with it a lot a couple summers ago. It really does come down to just finding a way to practice that makes sense to you and then just repetition, right? Keep working at it.
Yeah.
Could either of you comment on like the kind of preparations difference there is between a Viceroy competition like the ones that you're going to now for the finals and NCL, for example? Are they Like, how are they similar and how are they different?
Yeah, I would say for NCL or National Cyber League, it's a lot of very different questions about the same topics every year. So you always know there will be forensics, like recovering a hard drive, file compression, web exploitation. All of those are specific topics you can find on platforms like Hack the Box. If you were to do the majority of what Hack the Box offers, you'd be very well off for NCL. For the Viceroy competitions, the CTF style ones were kind of the same way, but Gilded Guardian itself, where it was a more like a mission sort of 3 straight hours of one goal and not a bunch of questions. That's a lot more of just reading the documentation. They tell you exactly what the systems are running, and then you'll have to quickly prepare for something like that when you only have a couple days with the documentation. But for NCL, you can always expect like SQL injections and stuff like that and just train hard on those.
That's very helpful. So the way I understand the goals with these competitions is not the competition by itself in a way and to find out who won and so on, even though that's important. It's the skills you would learn. And so for the Viceroy competitions, the goal, as I've heard it from one of the creators of these kind of competitions within BOD, is to be able to work in teams under constraints, something that we would consider stressful, and accomplish a mission. Like you have time, you have other constraints that are coming your way, rather than like breadth of knowledge or something like Sean was saying for these different topics that NCL would cover. So how do you operate as a team under very constrained environment, including time, and accomplish a mission? And that kind of aligns with the BOD missions you would encounter in real life, and it also in other situations. Whereas NCL could be more of like, how do you, acquire all of the skills and the knowledge and so on that, your curriculum would cover, and so topic by topic, that's what your class projects and the course exercises and so on would do. And so it kind of complements that. This is the way I see them from outside. I'm not the best person to say this because the real speakers on this one would be people like Sean and Adam and the ones that actually do the competition, not the people who talk about it. That would be me. And so, but I think that's the difference, and the preparations could probably take a slightly different approach. But what I also want to say is, I don't think the goal of participating in competitions is winning, and I don't mean this to sound like correct politically and so on. I really mean it. So what you learn in participating in it is really the thing to get out of it. And so it's great when you win and you are the place top, but it is equally great when you participate. So I think that's good to keep in mind.
Yeah. By the way, thank you, Sean and Adam, for those tips. Read the documentation and and prepare. I'll be busy over the summer because I think those would be useful. Also, I'm just curious for the big championship coming up that you're gonna be participating in, will that be live streamed for like us to like cheer you on and stuff? Or like how does that work?
I've heard it might be live streamed. I know it will be recorded in its entirety, but I've heard mixed things about live streaming it. There's a possibility though, and I'll let you know if I
Okay.
hear a solid answer.
Okay. Are you nervous if you're on camera?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. That'll be exciting. All right, good luck. Thank you.
Thanks, Mitchell.
Thank you.
Other questions? Great questions. We've got time, so.
Professor, you mentioned that there was like industry feedback that made the cyber program have the capstone be 1 semester. I'm kind of curious on that.
Oh, sure,
Like,
I can tell
because
you.
the CS
Yeah.
program has been 2 semesters forever.
Yeah, so the degree program was launched in fall 2023, the cybersecurity one. And the summer before it, and I would say even the spring before it, we were busy designing what courses to include in the degree program, how to go about the knowledge units to cover and things like that. And at that time, I was leading, and at that time we had two goals. One was we wanted the degree program, and that remains a goal, to be something that would satisfy what is called this Center of Academic Excellence in Cyber Operations. So cyber operations is the keyword there. And we wanted to be able to get that, that's a designation the National Security Agency gives. There is a whole list of knowledge units to be satisfied or to be covered. 10 of them are mandatory, and then there is another 17 optional that you are required, or the degree program is required to cover. I don't remember the number, 4 or 5 or something like that. But the 10 knowledge units are mandatory. So what we did was look for a way in which we can design courses so that all of these are satisfied, so that by the time we apply for that designation, we would meet the requirement. So that's one goal. The other goal we had was we wanted our program to be on a solid foundation in computer science. And so we made it literally identical to the computer science program and the software engineering degree program. So that means the first 2 years are like that. And so we insisted on having all those courses that the CS majors would take to be covered in the first 2 years. So that means once you have these 2 years already taken up by these courses, including what is needed generally in a Bachelor of Science degree, then we have the last 2 years to work with. We've got these 10 knowledge units that are mandatory, all to be satisfied, and out of the optional ones to cover as many as possible. So we came up with courses that have got long names. So Sean would be a good person to reflect on the courses he had when he has his transcript or Pumaya. They would see, the courses are long names: fundamentals of cybersecurity and cryptography, software security and reverse engineering, hardware security and hardware reverse engineering, and so on. And so the names are long because they're trying to do multiple things. They're not typical things that you find in the textbook for immediately and things like that. And so after we did these courses, we have only 2 years to finish them. Then how many courses do we need? So we ended up having 7 required courses and 4 electives. And that means anytime you try to come up with another course to have, you will have to find a room for it somewhere else. And so we started looking, where is it that we have an option? And one place where we thought of managing this was to think of a 1 semester capstone course instead of a 2. And with this in mind, we had a couple options and so on. And we saw, by industry, I meant like big and small, all kinds of people. And they were very, very involved with it, very helpful. And they all came back and said they liked the idea of a single semester capstone. They said this is what reality would be if you are out in industry and working. And it will also be good to get somebody serious from the first week in the semester and things like that. And so that's why. And so we did not have room. The 120 credits did not have room for having a 2-semester sequence. The CS and electrical engineering, for that matter, had 6 credits and 2 semesters. And that's okay if you think of more like the traditional way to think about what the project would be, where you have to talk to the customer, come up with a project description, understand their problems, and so on. And that's where the first semester is normally spent. And then the actual work would happen in the second semester. Ours, because we only have 1 semester, doesn't have that. And so you get to do what the project is right from the get-go. So it was born out of need, but I am happy that the way it is. And if I had to cut somewhere else, another 3 credit hours, that would be probably the best place to do it. And so that's what I meant, Emily, when I said I heard. And after we heard that, people like AJ, who has been teaching the computer science capstone, has thought about this. Would it be a good idea to try if the CS1 would also follow that? It would have a lot of implications, and we don't want to go there unnecessarily. So we're fine to keep on doing the way we are doing. And we may, if we go one way, I think in the long run, probably the CS program would go to a 1 semester course rather than the other way around. I think that is probably well aligned with, again, reality. We don't have that much. You don't get to work on the scale of a senior design project in real world and get a year to do it. You probably have a month or 2 to work on or something like that. So you are prepared better.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Other questions? For any of the teams, or to the Cybersecurity Club? Okay. Maybe then James could put up the link for giving feedback on today's presentation. We will have our last one 2 weeks from today, and we will have a very, very exciting seminar. A new professor at WSU, hardware security professor, who would talk about real cool topic. And so watch out for that. It will be on the CISR website. It's hardware security is not a topic we've covered this semester or even previous one. I think it has been a while, so it will be fun to listen to Professor Leon Lee, who will be speaking 2 weeks from today. So you can look forward to that, and that will be our last one. Those of you are, all of you are in Viceroy, so make sure that you are on top of things. Whatever it is that you have to submit on the learning management system, do that. James is busy grading them as they come along. And if you are a Viceroy student, which you are, most of you, you should be also expecting your stipend, which I said at some point, we were not clear on how things would go on the national level at Viceroy, but we have honored what we have said we will do. And so you would get stipends, your stipends in this month. It should be on its way. Our assumption is you have been doing what you are supposed to do in this semester, including attending seminars now, participating in your mentored research. That is quickly coming to a conclusion now when the semester ends, and so you'll have your posters presented in the summer workshop, which will happen in May after the semester is over. So if you're curious about the dates, it's May 18 to 22nd, I guess. So 18 is a Monday, whatever the Friday is when it would end. And we are working very hard, lining up a great set of speakers and some fun, great hands-on activities and field trips and so on. So you'll get to hear about those once you all get closer to the summer. All right, if you do not have questions, once you take the time to fill out the feedback, and you've got a few minutes to stay for yourself, and I will see you in 2 weeks' time. Thank you very much.